Now for our top international story this hour, we are examining the growing global trend of ditching the U.S. dollar. As this week, Russia announced it is working towards replacing the U.S. currency while conducting trade with African nations. Chairman of the Russia-Zimbabwe Business Council told reporters, quote, "I think it's possible to use other currencies in Africa," adding, "We know that the Russian bank VTB is planning to extend its activity in the region so we could switch to settlements in the currencies that are more convenient to the lender." This news comes just weeks after the Russian government announced it will work to de-dollarize its economy in a bid to lessen the impact of U.S. sanctions. Russian President Vladimir Putin spoke about this initiative earlier this month.
We will definitely be moving in this direction, towards independence from the U.S. dollar. Not because we want to undermine the dollar, but because we want to ensure our own security, because we have sanctions imposed on us. They don't let us work with the dollar.
And as we've discussed quite a few times here on In Question, Moscow is not the only capital looking to buck the U.S. buck. With the dollar's future in question, we thought now would be the perfect time to break down the details of this global trend. And In Question producer Kay Pritzker is here to help me do just that. Kay, let's start with Russia. What is driving this move to de-dollarize? And also, what did Russia do last month that has people a little bit concerned?
Yeah, so this is pretty straightforward for Russia. Obviously, Russia has been the target of a pretty aggressive U.S. sanctions campaign since 2014, and Russia anticipates that further sanctions might cut it off further from the international finance system. So they're stacking gold because gold has been an alternative international payment system for most of history, and they would use that to conduct international transactions instead of the U.S. dollar. They recently dumped 84% of their U.S. debt holdings. It really doesn't make sense for Russia to hold on to debt of a country that's targeting with sanctions.
Yeah, that seems to make some sense. Now, Russia did this in October, right? China also made a similar move. It's the largest holder of U.S. debt. Why is it following in Russia's footsteps?
Yeah, so China's in a similar position. Tensions between China and the U.S. have been very bad. Obviously, there's this trade war, and underlying the trade war is this U.S. recognition that China is the legitimate threat to its economic hegemony. So in anticipation of this, China set up this petro-yuan exchange, which would challenge the petrodollar system. The petrodollar system forces every country in the world to buy oil with U.S. dollars, but the petro-yuan system would allow international investors and countries to buy oil in gold and yuan. So it's a big blow to the U.S.
That is very interesting coming from China, but its neighbor, India, making similar moves. What can you tell us there? Yeah,
so India is not necessarily antagonistic to the United States, but it's also growing closer to China. India recently joined the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and it's also been picking up the slack in the U.S.-China trade war. China's been cutting down on its import of soybeans from the U.S., and India's been exporting soybeans to China. So if it wants to join some kind of multilateral organization with Russia and China, it would theoretically use gold to conduct payments instead of U.S. dollars.
So we're seeing an instance of the U.S. trade war pushing a U.S. ally far away and even closer to China, which maybe is ironic, not the intended outcome of Trump's policy, I'm sure. Japan, the second largest holder of U.S. debt, sticking with the trend here, no?
Yes. So Japan is interesting because it's traditionally been a strong U.S. ally, but Japan's economy has been weakening lately, and it's been talking to China, which goes against U.S. interests. Recently, Xi Jinping met with Shinzo Abe, the Japanese prime minister, and the outcome of that meeting was a 200 billion yuan currency swap, which shows that Japan thinks that the Chinese economy might be its future. It's trying to accumulate alternative currencies, the yuan being a international reserve currency that's fairly popular. So Japan and China may cooperate economically further in the future, moving away from the U.S.
So the trend here, dumping U.S. debt and buying gold, or expanding the gold reserves. Turkey is also following China and India's cue here. Why has Ankara moved to do that?
Yeah, so Turkey, again, is in a middle position. On one hand, it is a NATO country, but recently it's been having some tensions with the U.S. There was the spat over the arrest of Pastor Bunsen, and there was also the instance where Turkey bought S-400s from Russia. The U.S. objected to that, and Erdogan really stuck his ground. He dumped 12% of U.S. debt holdings, and he also repatriated 220 tons of gold, 28 tons of which came from the U.S. Federal Reserve.
Wow. And Turkey and India, I should also mention, both made this decision to buy weapons from Russia, even though the United States did not want them to do that. So they're signaling some changes in traditional alliances. Turkey's also been working to build an alliance with Venezuela, though, which made big news recently regarding the dollar.
Yeah, Venezuela recently announced that its international exchange would no longer be denominated in dollars. It would be denominated in euro and yuan, so you can't buy Venezuelan commodities using the dollar anymore. Also, they created this cryptocurrency called the petro. The petro would be an alternative means of payment for Venezuela internationally. It's backed by gold and oil, so any country that's interested in Venezuela's gold or oil can buy some petro, and Venezuela can get commodities it needs from the international market.
Venezuela is in a position very similar to Iran, which was way ahead of the curve when it comes to making some of these decisions, moving away from the dollar. What can you tell us about what's happening with Iran?
Yeah, so Iran is obviously no stranger to U.S. aggression, and a while back they were pulled from the SWIFT system, which is the electronic payment system internationally. They were re-added to that, but in 2017, anticipating further sanctions, Iran took the dollar off their foreign and financial exchanges, and gold demand has tripled in Iran as well because sanctions have further isolated Iran from the international financial community. Iranians know that gold is an alternative means of payment to the U.S. dollar.
Well, Iran's foreign minister said very recently that he believes the trend of the world is moving away from the dollar. Let's listen to what he had to say.
The seeds, and I'm not naive to believe that this tree will grow tomorrow, but the seeds of moving away from U.S. dollar are being sowed. And I think U.S. pressure is the fertilizer. The age of dominance, the age of hegemony is long gone. I see a future for our region when all states in our region accept this fact and stop trying to dominate.
Very briefly, Kay, all of these countries have something in common. They're either in some sort of rift with the United States or directly targeted by sanctions. Why does this move away from the dollar make sense for all of them? Yeah,
it makes sense right now because, these countries have always wanted this, but now the U.S. is really its hubris has gone beyond its capacity. It's fighting these wars in Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq that it can't finance. It's losing these wars. It's losing international respect. Well, these countries, Iran, China, Russia, are on the rise. They're forming multilateral ties. They're building diplomatic relations.
And something like that has never happened since World War II. It's no coincidence, of course, that many of these countries are also in BRICS, which are trying to build an alternative to the U.S. financial hegemony we've experienced over the last few decades. In question, producer Kay Pritzker, thanks so much for coming and breaking all that down. You are great. We're going to take a short break, but we'll be right back with more news.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe to never stop questioning more.